So this is gonna be episode 3 of the Future of the Music Industry podcast. Once again, I'm joined by co-founder Javi and our chief academic officer Atlas. So today's topic, y'all, we're gonna, I guess, do a continuation of last week. Um, but just acknowledging, what I'm saying, taking time to acknowledge the fact that the semester is of course getting started.
Hmm.
So we are in the process of now starting to interact with students and seeing them prepare to go back and conducting activities this year. So this year is going to be definitely new in many ways for a lot of them. So last week we talked about just the importance of getting out there and networking.
Right.
But I think so. This week we're talking about, all right. So assuming that you actually take the step of going out, networking. Obviously, students in our program are required to do these things. What comes next with regards to like these relationships? How do they maintain them? How do they make them meaningful? What does it mean to have um to build professional relationships as somebody who's like pursuing a career in this industry for real?
I like to think it's an extension of how you develop, like how it's an extension of how you network. And I can be specific in that. Like, for example, if you're one of those people that you network well within like certain groups of people, like we talked about earlier, like we talked about last time, like the meetup groups. Like say you're going to a technologist meetup group or something like that, and you're meeting other technologists who might be introverts like you or whatnot and what have you, right? So automatically you have a point of bonding that you guys have similar backgrounds and similar professions and whatnot and what have you. So in that regard, you're not having to really go so far potentially outside of your personal norms to maintain that relationship. And that's what we ideally think about when we say maintain a relationship, right? It's like how much like me is this person that the idiosyncrasies that I have on my own are very similar to theirs, and we just naturally gel. The the cost of maintaining this relationship thus is very low for a very high effective, you know what's the word I'm looking for, a very high outcome, right? Whereas some people it's different. If you're one of those people that you're just a generalist, you go out and you network in places that you're meeting a lot of different types of people, and you're you're what connects y'all are very different potentially, or very very hyper specific, very narrow. I'll use that word, like very narrow. It might be your personalities and the things you do personally might be different. So it's going to take more effort to maintain those relationships. You're going to have to put more effort into it, which really comes down to the basis of maintaining all relationships as I see it, which is how much effort are you willing to put into maintaining a favorable balance or a favorable like outcome with another person, professionally, personally, however you want to go about it. Like it's all going to come down to like how much time and energy you're willing to spend on it, because not everybody you can just not talk to for weeks and pick up where you left off like everything is cool. Not everybody. It just really depends on how you go out about it in the world.
Yeah, agreed. So I think I would start even kind of with the perspective of knowing what your goals are personally, because I think that will kind of tell you which of those people from the last networking event that you went to, you got 30 numbers. All of them are not going to have goals that align with yours. So I think it's a lot easier to kind of keep up with relationships on like a daily or even weekly basis when you recognize what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and can kind of set that next to what those around you are trying to accomplish, because that can give you kind of a hierarchy of opinion with, okay, no, well, I want to keep up with now what this person is doing, and I want to make sure that I kind of stay up with what this person is doing, because as they advance in their pursuits and in their fields and the things that they're doing, that will continue to benefit me, and vice versa. The things that I'm doing will continue to benefit this other person, which just equals a better go of it for everybody as a whole. So I think, um, as with many things, it helps to just kind of look inward before uh, you just kind of try to be everybody's friend for the sake of being a socialite in general.
Agree.
I mean,
Wholly
where
agree.
so in that though, so where does like selfishness versus selflessness come into play there? Because I think there's oftentimes a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, or just like, especially in this industry, people feel like networking is just a fancy way of saying what can somebody do for me, and that's how
Mm.
people kind of like do it. Like they don't take enough interest in other people in order to even understand what the other person needs, which leads to a whole bunch of like inevitably flawed or inevitable outcomes, inevitably bad outcomes, because it's a flawed approach. So like how much how much would y'all say like just that intentionality plays in it in the first place?
I got a real spicy take on this because I deal with a very particular version of that myself every day. Um, a few years ago, I moved over into I guess during the quarantine, that I moved over into, instead of me going and meeting people for my own gain and it's like, what can I get out of it? I intentionally went in the direction of, like networking with people who I actually wanted to help.
Mm.
Like, what can I do for you? Because my thought process was, and it was just something that an elder in my family told me that kind of like stuck in my brain. He was just kind of like, you can find out real quick whether you're dealing with a person you need to deal with or not by how they treat you when they're giving you nothing and they're receiving everything. Like, if that's what an OG told me, and I was sitting there like, I never thought of it that way. Like how people treat someone who's just completely like, what can I do for you?
Mm.
And people who are going to treat someone like, poorly when they have everything to gain is probably somebody you don't want to really deal with. You know what I'm saying? But someone who's like really actually like genuinely thankful, probably someone you should deal with.
Mm.
And ever since I adopted that practice, more often than not, I have actually seen that the people I enjoy spending time the most with, who do the most for me, were people who genuinely appreciated the amount of intentionality that I gave to our relationship from Jump Street. Now, there are a handful of people that at some point in time, they be like, all right, cool, well, I've got everything I need, I'm out. And that's fine. I don't feel bad about that. But if I were to average it out and say, okay, how many more? It is resoundingly more people who I've developed really strong relationships with, that rock with me the long way, that I got out of that I honestly don't think I would have gotten any other way. Now, mind you, I say that knowing full well I was in the position to be able to do that because I do have a lot that I can offer in a lot of different areas. So it wasn't like I was coming with nothing. But I can genuinely say that I would do it that exact same way again. And I really have no intention of stopping because of how much good fruit I've gotten from that harvest. to be
Mhm.
personally honest. Now, that's not a very easy thing to do because it takes a lot of ego death and a lot of like introspective parts of yourself, like introspective nature to have to be able to pull that off. But if you can, I would tell anybody to go for it. Yeah, it's gonna suck sometimes, but I have the benefits I've like gotten from it have definitely changed my life for the better, and I would do it all over again. That's
Sure.
Yeah. Like, so Javi, I wanted to get your opinion on it, on what Atlas was mentioning, because I definitely, we know our history with it, would always being people who probably overextended in times, especially, and I have to take credit for being that, because in large part of it, at least for me, I I intrinsically do, or have kind of like always gone by that creed. Like, I'm interested in like helping people who I think are who are like interesting, who are talented, who I genuinely want to help.
Mhm.
Understanding fully that not everybody shares that same thought process.
Sure.
And even as it stands today, like we reach out in order to be able to help people and help situations. But it is true that, you know what I'm saying, you give somebody an inch and they will try to take a mile.
Sure.
So, you know what I mean? So we've had numerous conversations about that, and knowing where to cut it off so that it doesn't become necessarily a toxic relationship, but also to Atlas's point, like not letting it make you bitter to the point where you go to that selfish side either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think the answer to that is pragmatism. I think understanding that you're operating in an industry where selfishness is kind of built into many of the positions, and it takes a degree of selfishness to be successful as an artist. Um, Understanding that people have the potential for that, and beyond that, that the industry, to an extent, rewards that in its own way when it's controlled and when it's focused. I think that will make you a lot more powerful in terms of just kind of your expectations on how to deal with it. Um, but for those selfish people, I think it is always important to remember essentially the things that we teach in this program, which is that selfishness can get you as far as you can take yourself. But the extent that you can take yourself on your own with no help, or essentially just with taking and taking and taking, um, it will never get you as far as moving in one direction with multiple minds that you respect. And you can never keep multiple minds that are as capable and smart as you by your side if the only thing that you are doing is consistently taking from them to benefit yourself. So I think the way to address it is to legitimately, for anybody that you're trying to maintain these relationships with, you need to have the conversation very on in the kind of professional relationship that, like, yeah, I'm here, I am here for myself, but I am also here for you, and understanding that the advancement of you will equate ultimately in the long run to the advancement of me. So being selfish in that way, in that when you're bringing people into your circle, you want to be selfish about your circle and not just yourself, if that makes sense. And if you
Yeah.
think about it that way, if you think about it that way, you can continue to move quote unquote selfishly without it being so kind of parasitic with all of the kind of bad and uh, kind of onerous things that come with that.
Yeah, I think a good example of that, and it's funny, you like I found myself, one of the habits, I think it's a bad habit that I have when I'm having conversations with people, is that I'll just like, when we're having conversations, when I'm negotiating deals, when I'm talking to people, and like I always come with like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do for you. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. But obviously, people are naturally skeptical. In which case, they absolutely should be, because everybody knows how people in this industry move. So people have some sort of caution, and of course, I've been called out for seeming to be offering too much for too little, So one of the things that I make a habit of doing now is like before, you know what I'm saying, before they even ask, I'm like, so I'm gonna tell you why it is that I'm helping you. And I'm gonna tell you like because you're getting all these things like, so what are you getting out of this? What am I, you know what I'm saying? Like what am I signing signing my soul away for? And it's like, no, I'm gonna tell you straight up, like this benefits me. This is mutually beneficial because of this reason. So because of this, and this, my ultimate goal is to get here because if I can get here, I can do this, right?
Hmm.
And by making that plain, my selfishness, the selfish side of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, the idea is to create a legitimate partnership, right? Like
Right.
I need you to understand what my motivations are, how it is that this relationship is gonna help me so that you also understand, yo, like I came to you because I genuinely believe in what you're doing. And I do think that there's something that I can offer to help, but I'm also am gonna try to get something out of this. Now, if at any point me helping you outweighs what it is that you're helping me, then now I have the leverage to be able to say, well, we're gonna have to pull that back because the thing I was trying to get from you that you weren't delivering on, I've already found someone else who can deliver on it. Now, at that point, we start to cross over, and I do think that that's when relationships can take a nosedive there. You can definitely take a nosedive there because then people feel like, especially if you weren't clear about those type of relationships up front, all of the things that y'all were collaborating on, you build friendships, you build relationships. Is it just purely transactional at that point? Is there any real desire to like connect with somebody? Um, it's hard for me to say. For me personally, because I do invest personally in a lot of people, and that's why I feel like I do like overextend. I do a lot of things more than what I should do if the relationship was just transactional. Um, because I do want there to be some goodwill, but is that the right thing to do? Is that the wrong thing to do? I think in many cases, not only do we see that in our own lives, but we see how others do it, especially through like how our students get those relationships, because everybody has to do it. You know what I'm saying? You see where people end up at the end of the day. But I don't know, like, is what's the proper balance?
I think that's the difference between being selfish and self-interested. You don't sound selfish to me in what you're describing. That doesn't sound like selfishness to me. That sounds like someone who's self-interested, which to me, and I looked it up, and like self-interested, the difference between being self-interested and selfishness is literally intention and motivation. Whereas selfishness is at the expense of another person. Self-interested is not. That's
I think
literally
that's
the
a
only
gem.
difference between those two.
I think that's a
Interesting.
gem.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, that's not bad. To me, that's not bad. That's being self-interested is self-preservation. Like we
Sure.
all got to pay towards power, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think about that when I deal with other people. I know you think about that when you deal with other people. We also know that there are people out there who don't. Now that
Hmm.
is pure, unadulterated selfishness.
Hmm.
Now, nobody, unfortunately, in this particular industry that we deal in, and I hope our students and the young people or just the industry professionals that look to us understand this. You are going to deal with people who are quite literally their entire careers are built on selfishness. Literally,
Hmm.
all of the clout that they have is completely amassed through selfishness, right? And that some of these people, at even the highest levels or the lowest levels, are would otherwise be considered necessary evils. The only you just not you. There are plenty of people who operate as a bottleneck. You got to go through them if you're trying to get out of your city, you're trying to get out of your network or your genre or whatever. Like there's just people who operate as a bottleneck, and
Hmm.
you have to understand the important detail is not to to me anyway, or how I've always felt, it's not whether to be selfish yourself or not. It's discernment, knowing how you deal with people who are like that, and just being able to be smooth with that. Like, you know what? I know who I'm dealing with. I know I got to move a certain way with this person. This other person over here, I don't have to because they're respectful. They know I got to pay Georgia Power too, so they're not going to ask too much of me that they know that they can't be able to provide quality and, you know, waste my time or whatever. You know that some people just ain't built like that. And that, I feel like, is the only real way to really balance it out, because it's not avoidable. It's not, certainly not in the entertainment industry. It's not avoidable. Like, you're gonna deal with it.
I think that that's a wonderful way. If I could summarize what it is that we've kind of like come up with then in that conversation, is that selfish people are a part of the game, and sometimes selfish people are people that it benefits you to work with, especially in certain seasons of your career. But your team should ideally be made up of self-interested people, because there's, when you talk about the difference between selfishness and self-interestedness, there's a realization that in me being self-interested is actually to the benefit of my team, which means that at the same time, me being selfless or overly selfless hurts every single person who is attached to me. So yeah, so that means that the math of that means that ideally you want everyone on your team to be very self-interested, very self-interested.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about kind of the negative things that come with selfishness, even to the point of kind of diverging the meanings between selfish, which I think has just a general negative kind of connotation, and this self interest. But I think what both of you have alluded to in your explanations is that selfishness can also lead to a very divine focus. Like, it can make you very, very effective at accomplishing the things that you're trying to get accomplished, uh, because there are no outside variables when you are very kind of self-motivated and self-interested and focused in that way. You get things done. And like you were saying, as long as your kind of field of selfish interest lies within anything that is just outside of your personal self, that can be very, very advantageous to the advancement of everyone in your immediate circle, as long as their goals align with yours.
You know what though? I'm glad you said that, because when we're talking about like maintaining relationships, that brings up a very, very interesting point. When at what time do you actually assess how you interact with other people based on the season that you're in? Because there is another part of that too, right? You brought up a very important point about focus. Let's just say that you're in the middle of developing something or yourself in a particular way. Like, and I will just use the blanket example. You're in the process of getting a certification at something that's very lucrative. Let's just say it like that, right? And so, you know, but without this certification, the things that you'd otherwise be able to do, minimal, right? But after the certification, you're good. You might meet some people along the way that are very interested in you, you know, working with you and whatnot and what have you, having them part. But you know that you'd have more leverage in that conversation after you've gotten done with your cert. Let's just say, using that as an example. So the pragmatist says, you know what? I'm going to focus on this right now. I'm going to keep that relationship warm, not hot, not cold, just warm, right? Until it's time for me to come to the table and like, yo, here's this thing I got. We can run this particular play or whatnot and what have you, right? But that's because you have some leverage that you had to actually like sit down and focus on and develop that before you were able to talk to somebody. versus what a lot of current rhetoric, or let's just say current social rhetoric is that, oh, when you get your shot, take it. You know, like when you get your opportunity, take it. Not really talking about the risk of you not being prepared to take that particular shot, and you mess up an opportunity because you weren't selfish or self-interested enough to make sure that you were, you know, on point with whatever you had to offer.
Agreed.
That is,
for the sake of relevance, think about it like this, right? For our kind of college-born people, let's say, for example, two people are in a biology class, and they get really close because they're studying together, right? Because the goals for that class, or the goals between those two people, is to pass the class. Once you get out of that class and you realize that one of you is trying to get into biomechanics and the other one is trying to get into microbio, one is going to go off into physiology, the other one is going to go into microbio 1, right? Once you're in a different class and it starts to kind of reveal itself that your goals may split, even though they may still be kind of adjacent to one another, in the name of maintaining that relationship, it just might mean that you want to change the nature of the relationship from talking every day and studying together every day to just keeping up with each other a couple times a month, right? But it still doesn't mean that now this person is worthless to you. It just means you may have to change the nature of the relationship. But that is a very poignant point in itself, where just because people's interests do not directly align with the things that you're doing at the moment, it doesn't mean that you just completely dump the value of that relationship.
I was actually going to say one thing I think is a good place to wrap, but a good topic to wrap on based on what you just said, because you bring up a very important point, Derek. Knowing what types of relationships that you need to drive your networking, your relationships in the direction of, right? Like, is this someone that I need to work with? Or is this someone that I should just be, you know, close peers and friends with? Because those two people are not always the same. Right?
Agreed.
Like, so those people are oftentimes not the same. I'm personally dealing with that right now, where there's somebody on the tech side, he's an investor friend of mine.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna be 100%. I never ask him for money, ever. I don't want him to ever invest in a company of mine. And not because he's not good, not because he's like a bad investor, none of that. It's really just because I enjoy the benefits of our friendship, that I don't need to work with this dude to like have that kind of support. You know what I'm saying? And maybe this comes with age. Maybe this comes with age and wisdom, right? But you realize as you get older, it's like, I ain't got to work with everybody. Some relationships are just cool. You know what I'm saying? Like the way they are. And that's okay.
Agreed. I think kind of realizing that within the circle of communication that you have, or your social circle, there are tiers to that circle. And just because you're not in one tier does not mean you are less important in the circle. It just means that there are certain things that you are going to engage with this person that you just will not do with another. It doesn't equate to more or less. It just means different. And if you can kind of keep the perspective on that without kind of falling back into kind of hierarching people, I think you'll have a much better and easier time with socializing with a large network of people over time. Thank y'all for listening to this episode of the podcast. Catch us next time, and we will continue talking about the way that you should carry yourself as this industry grows and changes, especially with the injection of all of this new young talent that NCEG is creating and proliferating. We will see y'all next time.